So you may not want to live in Chicago after all. In today's video, we're going to break down the 5 reasons why you should not move to Chicago, Illinois in 2024. Let's get into it. So if you've been watching this channel, you know I've been a resident of Chicago for the last 11 years, and I love a lot of things about Chicago. There's also a lot of things I don't like so much or that I just wish were different. And so I just want to give you a real view in this video. I'm not going to necessarily sugarcoat anything. I'm just going to give you the 5 main reasons why I think that you may want to reconsider moving to Chicago if you're thinking about moving here from out of the state. So these are going to be things that you're going to consider, from crime to property taxes and general taxes at large, to the weather, to traffic, and a couple other things I'm gonna mention on this video that you definitely wanna take into consideration before you call Chicago home. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jordan Pyle and I'm your go-to Chicago real estate agent. My team and I have been servicing the city of Chicago for the last 11 years, and we get calls, texts, and emails from people just like you thinking about moving to Chicago or making a move in Chicago every single day and every single week. And we love the opportunity, and we're super grateful for the opportunity to assist you with your real estate goals and your move. So if you have any questions about the real estate market here or your upcoming move, feel free to just reach out and text the number on the screen, and a team member or myself will get in touch within 24 hours. Also, if you're not quite ready to engage with our team, we send out a free bi-weekly newsletter. Absolutely no obligation. You can unsubscribe at any time. You can find the details down in the description so that you can start receiving that every 2 weeks. And lastly, if this has been of value to you today, just do us a favor and like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to turn on your notifications so you can catch all of our future videos and be the very first to know about all things Chicago. All right, let's jump into it. All right, first up on the list, we're talking about Chicago winters. Yes, you've heard it before. Seems like everybody really wants to dread and really talk about how bad the Chicago winters are. And I can't even lie, they're pretty miserable. So even though they're just a small portion of the year, maybe 3, 4, 4.5 months. So it's definitely not a short period of time, but it's also the reason why we don't take for granted the other seasons. And so a lot of people are actually moving to Chicago this year alone. I've helped probably 3 or 4 buyers that are actually wanting seasons. They're actually moving from places like California, Texas, Arizona, and they're desiring seasons. They've been in this hot, humid weather, or maybe in Arizona a little bit more dry, but just incredibly hot weather, and they want that variation of seasons. And so even though the Chicago winters are pretty brutal, and I'm gonna get into some details, it's not the worst thing in the world. And if you can endure and last through the winter, it just makes the spring, summer, and the fall that much more beautiful. So to get a better idea of how long the Chicago winter lasts, it's important to just talk about how many months you get the warm weather and then how many months you have the cold season. So the warm season lasts for 3.6 months, from June 2nd to September 19th, roughly, with an average daily high temperature above 73 degrees. The hottest month of the year in Chicago is July, with an average high of 82 degrees and a low of 70. And obviously in the summer here in July and August specifically, it can get very humid and very hot, just like a lot of other places around the country. But that's the time where we also take advantage of the lakefront. That's when we get out on the boats, we get active in the city. And what I love about the city is it absolutely comes to life, and it is a very active lifestyle city in those months between, let's call June, July, August, September, and into parts of October. That being said, the cold season lasts for 3.2 months, from December 1st to March 8th, with an average daily high temperature below 43 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest month of the year in Chicago is January, with an average low of 22 degrees Fahrenheit and a high of 33 degrees Fahrenheit. And yes, there are certain days, I would say, it's either late January, early February, every single year, we get this crazy wind chill week or two. So this is gonna be where we have, temperatures in the single digits. With wind chill, we're talking -10, -15, sometimes even up to -20. In those situations, your windows get all frosted up. You have a lot of risk of pipes bursting and things like that. There's just a lot of negative things that can happen during that week or two. But as soon as you get through that week or two, I feel that we are kind of on the other side of the winter season, and we just have a countdown of another month and a half before we start seeing some spring type of weather. All this being said, you just gotta have to get used to the Chicago winter. So if you want the beauty of the spring and summer here in Chicago and even the fall, well, you just have to last that 3.2 months through the Chicago winters, and it will be brutal, it will make you stronger, but you will come out of the other side, and you'll be looking forward to everything you can take advantage of in the city when it opens up and the weather gets nice. All right, so number 2 reason that you don't wanna move to Chicago is because high taxes. You've heard it before, Chicago has some of the highest taxes in the entire country. In fact, people in Illinois, not necessarily just Chicago, but in Illinois at large, between state and local tax rates, they're now paying the highest in the entire country. over 15 or just about 15% of a household income is going towards taxes in Chicago. Chicago's effective tax rate is right in the range of about 1.5% for homesteads or primary residences occupied by property owners. The average among all cities was 1.32. So we're 0.2% higher than the national average. And among the 5 largest US cities, only Houston had a higher residential tax rate at 1.56%. New York has the 3rd highest tax rate of 1.22% or 0.3% below Chicago. So that's talking a little bit about property tax rates, but if we break down some of the other taxes, this will just kind of give you a good idea. Illinois has a flat 4.95% individual income tax rate. Illinois also has a 9.5% corporate income tax rate. They have a 6.25% state sales tax rate and an average combined state and local sales tax rate of 8.86%. Illinois also has a 66.5 cents per gallon gas tax rate, and the state of Illinois collects about $7,379 in state and local tax collections per capita. Illinois also has $13,094 in state and local debt per capita and has a 51% funded ratio of public pension plans. Overall, Illinois' tax system ranks 37th on our 2024 State Business Tax Climate Index. So as you can see here, taxes in Chicago are high. They're not the highest in the entire country, but they do add up. So this is something that you're gonna want to consider. All of this information is coming from the Civic Federation, as well as sourcing to the Tax Foundation. All right, so number 3 on the list, we're talking about crime. Yes, you've heard this one as well. Chicago does have a little bit of a problem with crime. So let's get into some of the details here. So this is sourced from Property Club, and the methodology that I'm gonna break down here for selecting the most dangerous cities in the US, they determine the most dangerous cities and they look at numerous factors, including violent crime rates, as well as overall crimes per capita, AKA the population. They do all this to determine how dangerous each city is. They use data from the FBI's most recent crime report, as well as local and state data from 2021, 2022, and 2023, so that we get the last full years. Chicago also constantly makes the news as one of America's most dangerous and violent cities. With a population of 2,746,388, or roughly 2.8 million, Chicago has a crime rate of 3,926 per 100,000 people, making it 67% more dangerous than the US average. Much of the violent crime can be attributed to gang violence and conflict. What's important to consider is that not every area in Chicago is the same. It's not apples to apples in terms of where the most amount of crime is taking place. I would say the majority of this crime is being taken place on the south side and the west sides of the city. And so if you're living in other neighborhoods that are not on the south side or the west side, of course you want to be careful. You want to keep your head on a swivel. You want to make sure you're not getting yourself into bad positions. Maybe if you're walking at night, you just want to be a little bit more careful. Keep your eyes up. Don't be looking down at your phone. Make sure that you're not leaving your car running when you're not in it, because there have been a lot of carjacking, specifically in 2024 and 2023. But just like any major city of 2.8 million people, crime is going to persist. And so just be careful where you're at. Make sure that you're using the buddy system. You're checking on your friends. You're making sure if you're walking at night that you're doing it in a safe manner. You're not walking in places that you shouldn't be, or getting yourself into things that are going to increase the likelihood that you're going to get yourself involved with crime in Chicago. All that being said, Chicago actually comes in as the 14th city with the highest crime rates in the United States. Number 1 is Memphis, Tennessee. Number 2 is St. Louis, Missouri. 3 is Little Rock, Arkansas. 4, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. 5 is Oakland, California. 6, Detroit, Michigan. 7, Albuquerque, New Mexico. 8, Baltimore, Maryland. 9, Cleveland, Ohio. 10, New Orleans. 11, Lubbock, Texas. Would not guess that one. 12, Milwaukee, Minnesota. 13, Stockton, California. And then at number 14 is Chicago, Illinois. All right, the 4th reason that you don't want to move to Chicago is because of parking and traffic in general. Some information from the US News and World Report states that 5 of the 10 global cities with the heaviest traffic in 2022 were in the US, with Chicago ranking 2nd only to London on the report's international rankings. Following Chicago, Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, and Miami round out the top 5 in the worst US cities for traffic last year. The only new member of the top 10 US cities was Washington, D.C., which rose from number 13 in the country to number 8. In Chicago, the average driver due to traffic lost 155 hours in a year, or nearly 6.5 days of time spent in traffic, leading to an estimated cost of $2,618 in lost time over the year. The report measures lost time using a 2016 analysis by the US Federal Highway Administration, which, when adjusted for inflation, estimates an average hour stuck in traffic in the US is worth nearly $17. So as you can see here on the chart, you have the most congested cities in the United States, with Chicago being number one with 155 hours or $2,618 per year, followed by Boston, New York City, Philly, Miami, LA, San Francisco, Washington, Houston, and then Atlanta coming in at number 10. So all this being said, you just want to be a little bit more planned out when you're going places. So if you're trying to take the expressway, well, you're just going to need to factor in, especially during rush hour, you're going to just factor in different times. I like to use an app called Waze, W-A-Z-E. If you plug in your starting point and your end destination, it will take into consideration traffic, and it also will reroute you based on traffic so that you can find the most efficient route to and from your destination. And so, like I said, you just want to account for a little extra time. So if you're thinking you need 10 minutes to get somewhere, maybe leave 20 minutes early, right? There's different ways around the traffic in Chicago, but it does seem like there always is traffic, because a lot of the reason that there's traffic is because of construction. And in the winter, they can't do construction on the roads. So then when it gets nice out, it seems like that's the time where they just start doing it, and it usually lasts all season. They shut it down for the winter and then it starts back up. So you can't really avoid traffic in Chicago, but once you get here, you start to understand your daily commutes and where you go and how you get there. You start to understand the best routes to take to avoid some of this traffic on a daily basis. All right, number 5, the final reason that you don't want to move to Chicago in 2024 is the cost of living compared to the national average. So it may be a little bit more expensive in Chicago than you expected. However, based on the largest metropolitan cities in the country, such as like Boston, LA, Miami, just to name a few, San Francisco, Chicago actually has a pretty affordable standard of living or cost of living. And so I'll break down some numbers here so that you can understand how it relates. But it is a more expensive city to live in, especially if you're coming from somewhere that's a little bit more rural, less of a big city, where you're just gonna spend more money to live here. So as you can see on the screen right now, the cost of living in Chicago is 24% higher than the state average and 14% higher than the national average. For housing, buying and renting, compared to the state average, you're 77% higher and 38% higher than the national average. Utilities, 11% lower than the national average, which is the only one on this list that's lower than the national average. For food, you're talking 4% higher, which is not too bad. Healthcare is 8% higher. Transportation, 8% higher. Goods and services comes in at 7% higher. And then specifically, as you know, our team is a real estate team. We've been servicing the city of Chicago for the last 11 years. I have to throw in a little bit about the housing. And also, if you have any questions about housing in Chicago, thinking about moving here, maybe you need to buy a new home in Chicago and you already live here, or you're thinking about selling, well, our team has specialists in all of those different areas. We'd love to help you. Feel free to just text the number on the screen and we can get in touch with you to set up a plan to set you up for success. So back to the housing, the average monthly rent in Chicago is $2,241 per month. The average home price is $540,091. And your mortgage rate, which is obviously not a Chicago thing, but right now we're talking mortgage rates are somewhere between like 6.5% and 7%. So if you're thinking about moving to Chicago in 2024, well, you just want to take these things into consideration. Of course, some of these reasons are a little bit more significant than others. Like cost of living, for example, is just something, if you're moving to Chicago, you're already going to take that into consideration. You know, I would say the crime and the traffic and the cold winters are something that you really want to make sure it's going to fit into your lifestyle and it's going to be okay for you and your family. And so for those reasons, those are just 5 of the reasons why somebody may decide not to live here or to call Chicago home. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's obviously a plethora of reasons and pros on why you would want to live here. And I like to usually in these videos focus on mainly the pros, or I like to try to flip the cons into the pros, but sometimes the cons are the cons and you just need to take them into consideration. So through proper research, researching for yourself, getting acquainted, so just to make sure you're making the right decisions with your housing and where you live. Obviously, you just want to take these things into consideration. So I hope this video has been helpful to shine a light a little bit on some of the cons of living here. I do strongly feel that all of the pros of Chicago far outweigh the cons, but for some people, these are going to be deal breakers. So hope this has been helpful. If it has, do us a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on your notifications. Share this video with a friend. And definitely check out some of the other videos that you see on the screen right now. Until next time, we'll catch you on the next video. All right, peace.